It was unknown when a cultivation world, that was called a game, suddenly appeared. Players entered the cultivation world to battle against monsters and raise their abilities. At the same time, they could take the items in cultivation they earned into real life. Until one day when disaster struck them, as countless monsters arrived in the real world from the cultivation world. In the human metropolis. Ever since the monsters invaded the real world, the war between humans and monsters became endless. Cities fell in succession. The few remaining survivors were still bitterly defending the last human city. Suddenly, one of the fighting human warrior looks up and was terrified, because the final demon lord had appeared. As the final demon lord had appeared, so did many more monsters. As the density of monsters increased, the amount of humans decreased. Sword Immortal Gu Qingshan looks towards the demon lord and says that only one last move is left to try out: return together. Only this move could destroy the demon lord. Hearing that name, the nearby warriors persuade him not to use it, because if he uses it, then he would also perish with the demon lord. They didn't want Gu Qingshan to die because he was humanity's last hope, the strongest human alive. Gu Qingshan calmly tells him that this was only the option left for the human race. He charges towards the demon lord, emitting terrifying amount of sword energy. The remaining people understood that it was impossible to persuade Gu Qingshan, so they provided him with all their remaining spirit power. This in turn increases the power of the move, return together to new heights. Finally, the collision occurs between one human and one demon. The explosion was so fierce that it instantly destroyed the nearby places. After that battle, the last immortal of the human race fell. The relentless war between humans and demons came to an end with the defeat of the human race. The present world started to enter into a world of destruction, and player Gu Qingshan killed the final demon lord, earning himself a chance of resurrection. In another world, there was rain and lightning. It was night time and this place had an eerie atmosphere. Two people were standing near a pile of corpses. The short guy asks his leader why did they come to this pit of dead people so late at night. The leader replies with an excited look that dead people have some treasure on them, so they have come here to take it. The other short person then asked is there a need to stab them 2 times as they are already dead, but the leader only smiles. Suddenly, the leader spots a golden sword and rushes towards that place. He then proceeds to stab the person before taking it. All of a sudden, the person with the golden sword opened his eyes and blocked the stab towards his abdomen. Then he subconsciously thrusts his sword toward the leader and kills him. The other short guy was terrified and shouts, which makes the person with the golden sword come to his senses. He looks towards the short guy and asks him what is this place and who he was. Then he remembers that he had clearly perished with the demon lord. How did he come here? Before the short guy could answer, the leader who had died pushes his now blackish-green hand towards Gu Qingshan's neck and starts to strangle him. The strength of the leader was very high. It was even higher than before. Gu Qingshan struggles but reaches out for a bone nearby and pierces the leader with it. He then gets up and picks his golden sword and rushes towards the leader. He then once again stabs him and this time makes sure that he was dead. Only now does he realize that the place where he was standing was a battlefield, and the person whom he eliminated earlier had become an undead. This could only mean that this was not the present world, instead it was the world of cultivation world inside the game. Then he searches for his system. He shouts system, but the blue screen never appears. As he was thinking why there was no response from the system, the short guy from earlier had a petrified expression and asked him if he was a ghost or human. Gu Qingshan coldly replies him that wasn't it obvious that he was a human. The short guy, while trembling, was still on his guard, and asks Gu Qingshan for his identity badge that was on his waist. Gu Qingshan then looks at his badge and realizes that it was from the game Cultivation World and it was the old design. When the short guy sees the badge, he then realizes his mistake and apologizes, because Gu Qingshan was from Zioaki camp and he was on their side. Then he urges Qingshan to follow him towards the camp as this place was very dangerous. When Gu Qingshan looks at the lying people, he realizes that this type of leather armor was in style 10 years ago. He then asks the short guy what year it was. The guy replies saying that it was 681st year of Yongping. Hearing this, Qingshan was shocked, because this was the game Cultivation World from 10 years ago. Suddenly, he hears an emotionless yet familiar voice. That voice was of the system. It informs him that his resurrection to the past was successful and he had been given a new identity as a Vanguard Army soldier, Gu Qingshan of the human race. Activation of War God system was successful and will now restart his path of adventure. At this moment, Gu Qingshan confirms his hypothesis. He had indeed been reborn. Gu Qingshan then realizes that this War God system was different from the one in his previous life. Suddenly, they see a huge monster running towards them. Gu Qingshan sees the monster coming towards them didn't run, instead takes a fighting stance. But as soon as he thrusts his sword, he was shocked not because of the monster toughness, but because he couldn't use his previous life sword skills. He then decides to depend on his past life experience and so finds out the vital point of the monster and attacks it. The monster was then defeated. But because of the commotion this fight created, a lot of monsters were attracted to this place. Even some of the monsters were stronger than the one he just defeated. He realizes that running away would be beneficial as he couldn't defeat these many monsters. He then asks the short guy if there is any safe place for hiding. The short guy then tells him that the barracks with concealment magic are nearby and they should hurry. After running for a while, they finally reach the barracks. After reaching it, the short guy then explains, this camp was very safe and monsters couldn't discover it. Qingshan then tells the short guy that, when they entered the camp, he felt a slight tremor in the magic formation, and it couldn't last for long. The short man got scared and asked Qingshan what to do. Qingshan then tells him to bring more spirit stones. The short guy goes off hurriedly. When Qingshan was alone in the barracks, he thought of all the things that happened now. He had killed the demon lord and then regressed here. Not only that, but he also got a strange system, which was different from his past life. In his previous life, people originally thought that the Cultivation World was a virtual game. Only until the monsters invaded the present world did they know that the Cultivation World was real and truly existed. But it was too late by then. The outcome of the monsters destroying the human race was already finalized. And now the fact that he had been reborn into the Cultivation World 10 years in past meant that he had to stop the annihilation of the human race. But for now, he had to look for a way to survive. Then he remembered something peculiar. When he was killing monsters, his sword skills from previous life couldn't be used. Then he thinks of the War God system and a blue window pops up in front of him. It was the system notification which highlighted every information about him. He sees that his cultivation is the lowest now, that his first stage of chi condensation, and he also had something strange called soul power. He then sees that he could obtain more soul power by eliminating more monsters. Using this soul power points, he could level up to a higher cultivation stage. Gu Qingshan then discerns that this system was a lot more different than the one which players got in his previous life. The War God system then shows another message. It asks if the user wants to activate the first function of the system. Gu Qingshan selects activate. Then the skill was displayed, This skill could allow Qingshan to directly comprehend the moves of the previous holders of the weapon through physically touching the weapon. Comprehension of the moves requires spending a certain amount of soul power. Qingshan was shocked as he could now unlock skills by just picking up weapons. He then picks up a blade as there was no sword near here. The golden sword from earlier had already broken long ago. The system then shows the notification of moves he could use. But Qingshan realizes that fighting only one monster with blade was so difficult, then how could he fight a group of them? He then picks up a long-range weapon, the bow. As soon as he picks it up, a lot of skills were shown in front of him. He chooses the skill consecutive shooting, and instantly all the knowledge enters his mind. He then uses the skill and shoots the arrow. He was not satisfied with this, even though the accuracy was good. The arrow lacked power. So he then takes another arrow, but this time adds a bit of his spirit power and shoots it. The result made him shocked, because it was much powerful than earlier. He then thinks that this will help him survive and level up faster. All of a sudden, he felt a huge tremor. He noticed that it was coming outside of the barracks. When he gets to the border of the barracks, he saw an unprecedented scene. There was a huge humanoid monster without a head walking towards the barracks. Gu Qingshan instantly recognized it, because this type of monster first appeared in the year when players entered the cultivation world for the first time. It was called the Faceless Giant and was one of the most terrifying monsters humanity had ever faced. But why did it appear now? As Qingshan was thinking about all this, the short guy from earlier came with spirit stones and said in a terrified voice that the monster was heading here. The short guy was shouting that they will all die here, but Qingshan was calm because he knew that the giant was heading somewhere else. And it so happened, the giant ignored the camp and went further deep into the forest. But because of the wind current and power the Faceless Giant was emitting, the magic formation cracked. Their location was exposed and a lot of monsters came running towards it. Qingshan hurriedly tells the short man to charge the formation with spirit stones, as more and more monsters were coming. Qingshan then uses his unique bow skill to eliminate the coming monster. He was also satisfied with the bow, as it was suitable to deal with a horde of monsters. He then uses another skill, consecutive shooting, and kills the remaining monsters. Then the system message appears and says that the experience bar was filled and host's strength increased to second stage of Qi cultivation. The skill, Stabilize, had also leveled up and became even more formidable. After some time, the short man came and informed Qingshan that he had finished arranging the spirit stones and the concealment formation should last for a while now. But Qingshan says that it was not that simple, because the Faceless Giant wouldn't appear alone. There was a high chance that there will be high-tier soldiers following him. The concealment formation couldn't block all those high-tier monsters. The Faceless Giant had already discovered them, but chose to stay indifferent, which meant that he was in a hurry. Gu Qingshan felt that something big was about to happen. It was morning. Qingshan was awake all night. Suddenly he heard a loud tremor and his hypothesis was proved correct, as they came. The Steel Blood Demon and the Evil Ghost Fire Snake, these were both high-level monsters, and followers of the Faceless Giant. Even though they sensed something, they didn't move in the direction of the camp. Instead they went the same way where the Faceless Giant headed. Gu Qingshan jumps from the watchtower and lands on the ground. He was going to follow them, but the short guy suddenly shouted, and said to look quickly towards the sky. Something crashed in front of them from the sky. Turns out it was a bird. It was saying that it was tired. As soon as the bird sees the two humans in front of it, its soul escapes its body. It got so terrified after seeing these humans, that without wasting a second it flew fast into the sky. The short guy was alarmed and said to quickly catch it as it was going to escape. Qingshan then quickly shoots an arrow, as he wouldn't let this intelligent bird get away. The arrow pierces the bird and it was nailed to a tree. Qingshan acquires a bit of soul power, but that was not his main aim. He then sees a triangular-shaped thing on the bird's neck, and it was a command, which Qingshan decoded. It said that the target was continuing to move towards the south, attack with full force. This command came from the faceless giant. Qingshan realizes that this bird might be the messenger sent by the demon superiors to their army. But why did they do so? Did they want to start an all-out war? But that can't be possible, as Qingshan remembered all of the battles between humans and demons. Then he suddenly remembers an incident and quickly asks what day it was today to the short guy. At that moment, Qingshan realized that there was indeed an incident where the demons sneak attacked the sacred sect Supreme Elder, Grandmaster of Formations Gong Suanji, and Celestial Sect Holy Maiden, Ning Yuchan. The deaths of these two top-tier cultivators shocked the entire world. Their strengths were top-tier, and if they didn't die, then human race would not have been so easily obliterated by the apocalypse. With his current cultivation, it was going to be very difficult to get near those monsters. But he had to do something to save them. As Qingshan was thinking, he heard the sound of the system. And a notification popped up. It said that player Gu Qingshan had stayed up to 24 hours in this world. Now he would return to the real world. At this moment, Gu Qingshan realized that the system could even return him to his real world. The system also explained that all the equipment had been stored in the inventory and can be taken out when needed, even in the real world. Then Qingshan slowly disappeared. The Free Federation's Changning Federation. In a fancy hotel, a party was going on. Gu Qingshan appeared in the middle of the party. People ignored this, as there were methods to instantly teleport to another place. When Qingshan reached this place, he realized that this was his high school prom night. He had returned to the world before its destruction. As he was lost in his thoughts, he hears a melodious voice. He turns around and sees a beautiful girl. This girl was Schwerer. She was Qingshan's high school classmate and also the Su family's eldest granddaughter. Schwerer tells Qingshan that his good friend Zhang Yi mentioned that he had something to say to me. Suddenly, a person comes forward laughing. It was Zhang Yi, Gu Qingshan's friend. He then says that, yes, Qingshan has indeed something important to say to her. The surroundings suddenly became lively, as every noble and guest were waiting for Gu Qingshan to confess to Schwerer, and then she would reject him. Looking at the man named Zhang Yi, Qingshan frowns because in his previous life, Zhang Yi, his so-called friend, stabbed him with a ring containing aphrodisiac poison while he was confessing to Schwerer. This in turn made Qingshan do perverted things with Schwerer, and because he offended the Su family, there was no place for him in the Free Federation. Left with no choice, he went to the Fuxi Empire. Only when the cultivation world and the present world connected did he have a chance to turn it around. But it was already too late. But this time he won't let the same mistake repeat itself. Zhang Yi then urges him to quickly tell Schwerer what he wanted to say. Qingshan then starts saying, the guests were getting more excited to see Qingshan getting rejected. Then Qingshan finishes his sentence. He said that when she has time, she should come to his house to eat a meal, so that she can taste his cooking skills. After hearing this, all the guests were disappointed and turned away, resuming what they were doing earlier. Schwerer had a blush and a disappointed expression and asks once more, that was it only for a meal and nothing else? Qingshan replies, that it was only for a meal. Zhang Yi was dissatisfied and asks Qingshan that didn't he want to confess to Su Schwerer. Qingshan replies with a smirk that he never said that. Zhang Yi grinded his teeth and thought that all his plans were failing and it was time to get serious. He then extends his hand, which had the aphrodisiac, at a fast speed towards Gu Qingshan. Qingshan easily catches his hand and turns it around. Zhang Yi falls down, but Qingshan didn't stop as he dragged him towards Su Shuer. Then he removes the ring from Zhang Yi's finger and asks him what this ring was for. Zhang Yi was scared but still lied by saying that it was an ordinary ring. Gu Qingshan remembers that, in his previous life, someone wanted to frame him, but he was unaware of who it was. But this time, he would use the Su family guards to get the answer. He then calls out the name Sui. Suddenly, two people appear out of nowhere. One was an old man named Oldly, and the other was a woman named Sui. These both were the bodyguards who protected Su Shuer. The woman named Sui was dissatisfied, and asks Qingshan coldly that he could only call them when Su Shuer was in danger and he better explain it. Gu Qingshan calmly tells her to take a look at this ring first. As soon as she looks at it, she realizes that there was a very strong aphrodisiac on it. Hearing this, Su Shuer face reddened. Qingshan then explains that even though he didn't know the reason, there was one thing that could be verified, and that is, there is someone who wants Su Shuer and him to be humiliated. As for who that person is, they could obviously ask the guy crawling below. Zhang Yi tries to run away, but the bodyguard named Oldly appears in front of him in an instant. He then uses a strange power to cover his hand and puts it on Zhang Yi's head. He then says that as long as Zhang Yi speaks all the truth, he could fulfill all of his desires. Zhang Yi then says that he would tell him everything. Seeing all this, Qingshan on the side asks Su Shuer if this was sky select ability. Then Shuer explains that Grandpa Li had an ability which could hypnotize people and make them speak truth. The old man then coldly asks Zhang Yi to speak who wanted to harm Shuer. Zhang Yi then tells him that he doesn't know. The other person is mysterious, as he used an anonymous online account and sent him money using a fake account. Qingshan realizes that there must be some big shot instructing him. Oldly then tells Qingshan that he doesn't know anything. Qingshan walks towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was begging on the floor and asks Qingshan for his forgiveness. Qingshan coldly says that it was time for their friendship to meet the ghosts. After saying that, he kicks him with such a high force that he was sent back and crashed in the wall. The surrounding guests were scared by the sudden change of the atmosphere. Qingshan then instructs Sui to continue to investigate the person behind all this. Sui, even though didn't like this dominating side of Qingshan, replied with a yes. Su Shuer comes with a smile on her face and thanks Qingshan for protecting her reputation. Qingshan replies saying that there was no need to thank him, as he was doing that for himself. Su Shuer was surprised and thought that, when did Gu Qingshan become so dominating? He was always a timid guy who loved books, how come he changed so much? Qingshan ignored her and focused on the system screen that was in front of him. He had too many thoughts in his mind. Why were the monsters in the cultivation world taking action? Who instructed Zhang Yi to trouble him? Why did he get this war god system? And the most surprising thing was that this system lets him enter the cultivation world and present world. Since it was like that, then he should take advantage of the system and prepare himself for the apocalypse. That's all for this video. If you want a part 2, then comment.